runway, the main runway at Reagan National, is the single busiest runway in the country. For years, lawmakers and leaders here in the area have been talking about how busy this is and freeing up some space. You know, it is a very tightly controlled airport, limited space, and the planes come in very quickly, and they have very limited time between them. They're going to be looking at all of that. We don't know exactly how many people are on board, but this plane roughly has 70 seats on board and has a crew of a pilot, a first officer, and at least one, but likely two flight attendants on board.
Sam, you fly out of this airport all the time. It's not unusual, as I've been there, to see helicopters flying in and around. But something like this, I mean, there's traffic like this in the air over DCA, over airports here in New York like this all the time. How unusual is it, even for a helicopter and a plane to get this close, let alone hit?
I mean, there is required, minimum distances, but keep in mind, as you said, the Coast Guard has a base there. They're flying their helicopters in. The Pentagon is not far away from Reagan National Airport. They're flying their VIPs in and out all day long, and these helicopters go up and down the Potomac all day long, moving government officials around. And if you take a look, you back up. Aviation in the United States is the safest it has ever been. This is the first serious deadly crash on a U.S. commercial airliner in the United States since 2009, when the Colgan airplane crashed in Buffalo. There have been smaller incidents. Asiana plane crash in San Francisco at the end of the runway where two people were killed. But this is the first major incident, and we are told by multiple sources that there have been water rescues, multiple people pulled from the water, and that there are likely multiple fatalities right now.
All right, I want to turn to Aaron Katersky. Sam, stay with me along with Steve. Aaron Katersky is here with me at the news desk here in New York City. Aaron, what are you learning? You just heard Sam talking that there will no doubt, there are 70 seats likely on this plane coming into Reagan at a relatively early hour in the evening.
It was operating as an American Airlines regional flight from Wichita into Washington, D.C. when it collided with this military helicopter. It is expected there are going to be a significant number of casualties. We understand, though, that there are water rescues taking place, and that is the priority right now. Beyond what caused it and all that, the priority is to try to save any lives that can be saved. There will also be undoubtedly, Phil, a number of dead as well.
We've heard from the White House, the press secretary. The White House press secretary has told us the president has been briefed. I've seen J.D. Vance, the vice president, has put out a call for prayers on his X account. But Aaron, what do we know about the response? Obviously, this is a massive response that we're looking at on the banks of the Potomac, right at Reagan International Airport. Of course, the first thing that they're going to do is try to save everybody. Are we in contact with any of the first responding agencies?
We are, and they are still trying to get a handle on the situation as we are, but we know divers are in the water right now. They are desperately searching for any survivors that they can find. The Potomac has been iced over for weeks. It was just now starting to thaw as it climbed into the 50s in Washington, D.C. today, but the water is still extremely frigid, Phil.
Steve, are you still with us?
I am, Phil.
All right. Steve, talk about what happens in the immediate aftermath of an incident like this, of a crash like this. The plane was relatively low at the time.
It was, Phil, and there's some really disturbing video that appears to be taken from the Kennedy Center that appears to show a flash at impact, and that seems to have occurred at probably 150 feet above the water, and so that is very disturbing, and that does not bode well for survivors. As Aaron notes, the water's quite cold. The ice has just begun to break up on the Potomac, and so Getting anybody that might have survived out of the water is what's going on right now. Phil, as you know, at airports like LaGuardia and DCA, you have emergency crews that have to be able to respond both to mishaps on the runway or around the airport in the vicinity on land, but also on water. So we're seeing a lot of pictures right now of boats and flashing lights and emergency vessels out on the water looking for people to rescue. And so Reagan National, just like LaGuardia, just like SFO, are all very prepared to handle mishaps. But I think in this case, what's most disturbing is that we do see indications that there was a bright flash at impact, and it appears the regional jet dropped very quickly into the water thereafter.
Yeah, Steve, just to let you know, I put my eyes on that video before, just before we came on the air. And you know, we have a visual verification team that is going, you know, to be looking at that. But the video you're describing, you can see a light in the air, which appears to be the helicopter because it was moving, you know, much slower, and you can see it. And the plane was just coming in. And then there is that flash, which seems to be an explosion, and you're right. I don't know if it was the helicopter or the plane, but something fell probably together very quickly. And it didn't, if you're saying 150 feet, it went down into the water pretty quickly. But what are the ramifications of that impact? That is what we're seeing in the sky.
Yeah, it all goes back to what both Sam and Aaron have been talking about, how crowded the airspace is around DC. But there are rules. If you're going to fly around, in some cases with some of the military folks, you have to have special qualifications. You have to be certified to fly around the White House or around the restricted areas around DC. And so why this helicopter was up, the only thing I can think of, Phil, is runway 33 is rarely used. It's not something that if you were even if you were flying around DCA, you would not think that runway 33 would be in use. It's usually the main north-south runway, or there's another runway when the winds are off that lands towards the southeast. And so perhaps, like I'm only guessing here, perhaps this helicopter crew thought that, well, this runway's not in use, and so perhaps we can climb up a bit and not have to stay in this corridor. But that's the only potential explanation that I can think of at this point of why this helicopter might have been up into the approach corridor. Phil, I'll go back and talk a little bit about having flown in a fixed-wing airplane and been around helicopters at night, and even flying helicopters and flying around other helicopters at night, particularly in the around a city where you have lots of lights, and so you have what pilots call light pollution. And so the bright lights drive down the gains in your eyes, so the ability of your eyes to be able to pick up dim lights. So if, let's say, for instance, if this had been close to an airport, say in the middle of the country or way out in the middle of the prairie where you didn't have as many lights as around, perhaps the helicopter would have been more easily seen. But anytime you have a helicopter which has very dim lights flying over that black water at night where you can't pick up any depth perception, and you have lots of bright lights of the city behind it. So you think about this, and as they were landing over the Potomac, Phil, they were pointed right at northwest Washington, D.C., with the lights of downtown just off the right side of the airplane. And so all those bright lights, and they're looking out and looking to try to pick up the visual cues to land on this runway over a very black water with no reflection, and so an inability to see a small object flying beneath them or even at the same altitude. I've seen it before, and it's a classic mishap where something crossing at night where your peripheral vision at night is not very good, and you just don't see it, and it leads to tragedy. And this is not the first time it's led to tragedy, where you have mid-airs between either helicopters or helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft at night.
We're just getting word from